Hello and welcome to episode number 87 of the Nintendo Jump Podcast. We are a weekly discussion podcast created for Nintendo gamers by Nintendo gamers. It's February 25th. My name is Daryl, and today I'm joined by a brand new panel. But I'm going to start with the old guy. Hey, Kevin, how are you, man?
Oh, man, you know what? Just like last time, I am feeling very effervescent. I'm good to go. It's a great day. I'm feeling amazing with my, kombucha on my side. I won't say where it's from because it will obviously get shut down. So, and also joining us is Beckzilla. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well, and for all of you listening, this episode is for all of Fodlan. It's now or never.
Ooh.
Kill every last one of them. And also joining us for the first time ever, very, very good friend of the show. You know him as Napping Rat. Nathan, how are you, man?
I have a small reveal here. I'm actually Sergio's alter ego. We are one and the same, so sorry to reveal that to everyone on the Discord. But yeah, my name is Nathan, Napping Rat on the Discord, also Sergio on the Discord.
Sergio ALB64 on Twitter. So Sergio is not joining us this week for reasons we will discuss in a second. Mostly just re-watching the Animal Crossing Direct over and over. I can't get him to stop. So
yeah,
send help, please. But this is a very special episode, and I'm just going to hand it over to Kevin. What are we talking about?
Well, Daryl, we're going to talk about the Game of the Month, Fire Emblem 3 Houses. Yeah.
That was okay until the word houses there.
Wait,
everything else was good.
No, you know what?
Pretty McDonald's, I'll give you that.
No.
Little McDonald's. I am loving it.
Okay.
Don't do it.
No,
Don't do it.
no.
We'll get copyright
Okay.
strike. So, yeah, we're going to talk about Fire Emblem 3 Houses as our game of the month for February, which is now wrapping up. And, man, have I been wanting to do an actual full review and discussion of this game for the better part of 6 months at this point. Oh, man, I'm excited. Nathan, how you feeling?
Pretty good, actually. I made it through one full house, and I was hoping to get at least to post the time skip in Blue Lines. This is a long game. Figuring this out 200 hours in.
Just
pretty
a
long.
little bit.
Nice.
So I think we're going to start. For anybody listening, during the course of this episode, we are going to delve into spoilers. And by that, I mean we are going to delve into pretty much every spoiler that we can think of in the game. But that's not going to happen for a few minutes, and we will have a very clear call out. So you will hear our overall thoughts of the game, very non-spoilery and very mild, and you'll hear what we think about the game, so you can leave on that note if you don't want to be spoiled, which is why Sergio is not here, actually. He had not finished the game yet and didn't want to be spoiled, so yeah, miss you, buddy. Other than that, so I want to get into, and Kevin and I have already talked about this game, so I'm going to give you two a shot, Beck and Nathan, to talk about your overall thoughts of the game, and, is this your favorite game on Switch? And yes, why?
Okay, so this is not my favorite game on Switch. I'm sorry, Daryl.
What?
I know.
Dun, dun, dun.
My favorite game on Switch is Breath of the Wild. So it's in good company with Breath of the Wild. It's a game I've played a lot of. This game is beautiful. The music is outstanding. It's my first Fire Emblem. And
Me too.
yeah, it was a great way to start, I think. Right, Nathan?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I've played 215 hours of this game.
That is very good.
This is a long game, guys.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
And I love it. I love talking to people about it. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a wonderful game, but not my favorite.
Is it your second favorite?
Sure.
Is it your third? Nathan, what are your overall thoughts? Like, you played a lot of the game at this point. Is it one that you continued liking the more you got into it, or did it kind of have a jumping off point?
Absolutely. Yeah, I will say, go back to the Game of the Year awards. This was my personal biggest surprise of 2019. I knew I liked strategy games, really into Command and Conquer as a kid. like
nice.
the Warcraft 3. Never really got in past that. Warcraft 3 turned into a lot of things that I did not partake of. But I knew strategy was great. I didn't expect it to be so engrossing. I knew I'd like the strategy. I knew I'd like all the battle systems and character progressions and stuff like that. I didn't expect to care about the stories and these characters as much as I ended up caring about them. So, I mean, I really think it is the whole package from that perspective. I would highly recommend. It seems timeless. Seems like something somebody who buys a Switch in 5 years would still really enjoy. And I guess I think that's probably the highest praise I can give it, is that somebody should pick it up now if they're interested, or next year, the year after that. It will be good. Good experience whenever you get to it.
Yeah, I think I would also agree with that. And then, so Kevin, I know you've already kind of talked about it. We both gave it our game of the year for last year. So, hey guys, we kind of like this game.
Well, actually,
as-
sorry, I did not give this a game of the year, but it was one of my favorite games. I did give Katana Zero my game of the year.
No, we both gave it our game of the year,
Okay,
Kevin.
as a team, yes, but personally, I'm just spitting out facts. But no, you know what? Okay, this is our game of the year. Fire Emblem Three Houses. Put on the
No,
record.
I mean, so I was just I was making a joke, but
Yeah.
thinking back, so that we played it a lot last year, and then we both kind of delved back into it. You with the DLC, me with a different run for Game of the Month, and what are your thoughts now? Have they changed at all?
For the love of this game, it has not changed. I still love playing it. I think the challenge in the DLC, aka Cinder Shadows, is ridiculously tough. I had a tough time in Chapter 2. Every time I played that chapter, I played like several times. I either lost Byleth or one of the Ashen Wolves. I'm like, oh, another 45 minutes wasted again and again. And then I finally, became victorious for Chapter 2. And then the next chapter, which I heard was even tougher.
Man.
I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna stop right here. And now we're here talking about the game. But yeah, no, I really like, how it just dives more into. Can we talk about the DLC right now? Is it spoilers? Yeah, we are. Okay, cool. Sorry.
Yeah, so when I say spoiler, we're gonna avoid any story moments that we didn't know about before the game release. So I would call all of the DLC, with the exception of you travel to the Abyss and you meet some a fourth house, quote unquote, some new characters, and go on a fun misadventure with them. So what we do know about it is it's a fairly short campaign. It's in the realm of 8 to 10 hours or so, unless you repeatedly fail Chapter 2, in which case it could be as long as you want it to. And
Yes.
it is more challenging than the base game, as you have alluded to. So, yeah, for me, I gotta say, this game has gotten better with time. So since I played it last year, and again, it was my game of the year last year, this game has grown for me and gotten actually a lot better. So when I finished it the first time, I would have called it a top 3 Fire Emblem game. Now I think it might be the best one.
I have to agree. Yeah.
I have this strange nostalgia for the first game on Game Boy Advance. I think that's a very, very special game for me personally. But if I'm putting nostalgia aside, this game is so good. It's so good. So
yeah.
we'll get into why. But I mean, I think we're probably not alone on this. So if you were following our Twitter or in our Discord, chances are you responded to a survey that we put out for this game, for a Game of the Month. We actually had a bunch of people writing in. And we asked them, just what overall score would you give to the game? And I was not necessarily surprised, but people really, really hovered around the 9, slightly higher than a 9 overall. And we didn't give decimal scores, mostly because of the limitations of the survey itself. But yeah, people genuinely think this is an amazing game, and that's just nice to see.
Well, the thing that was really impressive to me on the survey in particular was a bunch of respondents. The lowest score from anybody was an 8. Everyone liked it.
Yeah. So I kind of expected that to be more divisive than it was. But yeah, and another stat, we asked, had you played Fire Emblem Three Houses before the game of the month, and most people had. We asked, had you played Fire Emblem game before Three Houses, and about 3/4 had. So 4 people answered no, 2 of which are on this podcast. So there you go.
Hello.
What I really liked was the question. How has the game shaped your opinion of Fire Emblem as a series? Are you more or less interested in future games? One person voted neutral. Everyone else said they are more interested in future games. So yeah, this game left a really good impression with people.
And I think the beauty of that is that there's something for everyone. There's a character for everyone. There's a story that resonates with everyone that's playing. And I really think that's the beauty of it. It's kind of a rare thing to find in a video game, to have this huge group of characters or NPCs even that you can really have an interaction with and have part of you respond to it in a way.
Yeah,
I think that's really cool.
Like the gatekeeper. Like every time you,
Nothing to report.
Yep, there we go. And
except for everything.
Yeah, nothing to report. Meanwhile, I've got a ton to report. And his alter ego, the Abyss Keeper, who is like low-key one of my favorite characters ever at this point, who says, "Hey, listen up, I've got something to report," every time you talk to him. It's just I see you. I see what you're doing. And I think you hit the nail on the head. So Fire Emblem as a series is a tactical RPG series. So you've just said 2 words that are kind of a niche genre, but it's built on the backs of extremely likable characters, and it has been forever. The very first game, going back to Hector, is one of the coolest characters in any video game ever. But there's dozens of them in each game. They're all very strong. They're mostly very strong and interesting characters. And that continues on more or less throughout the series. I think Awakening had fantastic characters. Mm-hmm. Fates got a little lacking there, but it was really nice to see that Three Houses, this is probably the high point in the series for overall interest of the various characters in the game, of which there's a ton of them.
But the characters aren't one-dimensional. There are characters that I don't like that other people love, and I think that's also the beauty of it. They're not all likable characters. They're likable to somebody.
How can you not like Seteth?
I plead the fifth.
And we'll wait till the spoilers to no.
Just to add on all that. I mean, with the beautiful characters comes, amazing dialogue between the characters. I mean, you're like every time you get to raise like just a level of like companionship between character to character, you unlock different types of different dialogues back and forth, and like what Beck just alluded to, just they're just all these like different dimensional characters. Like one likes to paint, the other is just is talking to a bird, or another one is just trying to trying to find a partner. I mean, there's just so many different varieties of personalities in this game, and
some of them are trying to find multiple partners.
Yeah,
some of them are trying to find literally anyone.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like. What I really liked is Fire Emblem sometimes gets a little tropey in its characters. Like it does make these one-dimensional, hey, this is what I care about. Hey, did you hear this is what I care about type characters over and over and over. This game kind of starts feeling like that, and then every character gets more interesting the more you get to know them. And that's built on, so if you haven't played Fire Emblem before, play Fire Emblem, please. This one's great. But if you haven't played it before, it's all the characters have multiple people that they can support with, so that you see these conversations between characters, between the main character and them, and between them and their other support characters. And that gives you some stat boosts in battle, but it also really fleshes out the lore of the game. And I think, like was already said, the writing in this game is maybe the best writing in any game I've ever seen. It is so complete. That you feel like, people really loved these characters when they were making them. And you feel like, hey, these are people at the end. And that is so cool. It's something that, you would not really link to a Nintendo game in general. It's not really exactly their strong suit. But man, did they hit it out of the park with this one. And the voice acting goes right along with it. The performances were incredible in this game.
Oh man, speaking of the voice acting, I was a little concerned everything in English. I don't know why I was initially cautious of that. I started with Japanese, and you have access to full Japanese. I don't speak Japanese, I just like how it sounds. But then I started liking the characters unexpectedly so much that I wanted to hear from them in English. And I tried to avoid the voice acting, but I couldn't. I got too interested.
Yeah, and I mean, in the past, I've been one to skip some cutscenes and such when I just wasn't interested. I don't skip anything in this game. I don't skip the battle animations. I don't skip the conversations. Nothing. Like unless I've seen it before, and I'm just like, oh, okay. It's just really strong.
It's incredible, and I think just like Naparat, or Nathan, you mentioned that you were hesitant on the voiceovers for English, and I could see why, because I mean there's a lot of games where they offer Japanese and English.
They're awful.
Yeah, and they're usually awful. Like in Final Fantasy X, there's like a couple lines where Titus laughs really weirdly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that obviously leaves like a sour taste in our mouths. But then I think over the years, like it's gotten a lot better, and Fire Emblem, like just the way they did it here, like it just you can just tell like they had a lot of fun, voice acting, and like we get emotionally invested in all these characters, whether you like them or not, as Rebecca alluded to, or mentioned. And it's just I don't know, I haven't played it in Japanese yet, but I probably will in my next playthrough with one of the other houses besides the Golden Deer. But yeah, such a well thought out game. I don't know, like I can listen to the dialogue for hours and still be entertained.
And I think that speaks to the writing and the voice acting. They're both so evocative that, Nathan, you changed from listening to it in Japanese and you stuck with it because they both work. And it really lends itself to telling you how much time and effort was spent developing this game.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think the real high watermark and the real strong point of the game is the characters, like we've talked about. I think the lore is really, really, really good, and we'll get into that after the spoiler break because there's no way I can talk about it here. And I think that the emotional decisions of the game, so you do know from the trailers that eventually, at the start of the game, you pick one of three houses, the Black Eagles, Golden Deer, or Blue Lions. And at some point, something happens. And the three houses may start fighting each other. And some of the emotional moments in the game, man, some of them really get to you. We'll save exactly what I'm talking about for a few minutes from now, but it's just so it kind of leverages these really strong characters to drive this story and make you feel things, and that's really cool to see. But outside of the characters, so Kevin and I, Kevin, you'd played Fire Emblem in the past, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you and I had played before. I think mechanically this game really holds up. All Fire Emblem games, I would say, are pretty strong mechanically. I think this one has a lot of the quality of life improvements that the series has gotten over time. It scrapped a few things from Awakening and Fates, which was not a bad decision. So it completely scrapped the child system.
I didn't mind that at all. I
didn't either.
Yeah, like I thought it was a great decision because honestly, I think that stuff's overrated. And like, it's not about like shipping two people to have kids and like have them become strong units. Like, I want to focus on the people that are intentionally built into the game, that have like all this dialogue. Like, I want to hear from them. I don't need to hear about the next generation. I mean, I'll probably play a different game if I want to focus on that.
Well, I will say that was done extremely well in Awakening. Right. It actually drove the story around it, and then in Fates, it's literally just shoehorned in there because you liked it the last game. It's awful. It's awful.
Oh,
anyways,
yeah. That's where I'm coming from with for Conquest, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Fates is awful about it. It's just like the children are in a different dimension or something, so they're aging faster. Yeah, it sounds stupid, goodness. It is. But Awakening actually had a really nice story reason for it, and I appreciate it for that. But this game also drastically changed the pair-up system from previous games. And I think that was a decent option. It also removed the classic Fire Emblem weapon triangle. So in the past games, swords would beat axes, would beat lances, would beat swords. So you really had this, and on top of everything else, you had this rock, paper, scissors type arrangement that this game somewhat did away with. You do get skills that still kind of bring that back up if you choose to equip them, but it very much lessened the effect of it. Some people are a little bit mixed on that, and I understand it, but I didn't think it hurt the game too much. But I do want to hear from Beck and Nathan. Actually playing the game mechanically. Once you get onto the battles, you start doing the strategic, turn-based, basically super overpowered chess. What'd you guys think about it? How did it play for you guys for a first-time player?
Okay.
Awkward pauses.
Well, you kind of lost me with quality of life and talking about the old games, so I'm kind of stuttering over what exactly you're asking me because I didn't play those other games. So
well, I'm asking, coming into this game, you come into this weird battle system that's kind of unlike something you've played before. I know, Nathan, you had a bit of strategy games in your past. How did you find the battle system as a first timer? Did it make sense to you? Was this something you had to struggle through and learn, or how did it feel?
I will say that I found it to be a kind of refreshing change from the real-time strategy that I had predominantly seen before. I played a fair amount of Civilization, so this has got the same sort of hey, you get a phone call, you can just put the controller down and nothing happens. So you don't need to pause, you don't need to do anything like that.
Yeah.
Which means that, I guess to me, it also felt like if I failed, it wasn't a reaction time thing. It wasn't a clicks per minute type thing that often happens in real-time strategy. And I really enjoyed that on the normal difficulty, first time playing it, never touching a Fire Emblem, I could kind of, just kludge my way through it, and I would understand mostly what was going on there. But then 200 hours later, I'm still learning things about the mechanics. It does feel very finely tuned. It's the what did Sakurai say, the 18th game in the series?
Well, let's practice our binary counting, everyone. Okay, start it out 1, 2. No, okay.
It feels it shows how mature this entire system is. Things make sense. Magic, bows, all of this. It seems like this is definitely the byproduct of a lot of iteration and feedback from players. And I really enjoy the complexity. I will say that I'm pulling out spreadsheets, looking up things online. It's cool. It's engrossing, and I like that the normal difficulty is low enough that if you're not interested in looking up, exactly what resilience versus resistance means, it's okay. But if you want to play in the harder difficulties, if you want to do what the NJP Pact asks of you, there's more depth in there. There's more to improve on. It's this is not checkers, it's chess.
And I think that's really interesting, Nathan, because I wasn't technical about it at all. I didn't do the NJP Pact, which was essentially not going back, and if you lose a unit, you lose a unit. That's it. And I wasn't about that life.
It was an exercise in crying. That's what it was.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, there was a bit.
I didn't do the NJP Pact until a little over a week ago when I was asked to be on the podcast, and then I decided I need to know something more about this NJP Pact. It has been painful.
Part of it was because, personally for me, I come from, just this perfection mentality for Fire Emblem games in the past. I've talked about how in Conquest, which is, one of the toughest games tactically, there was one mission where I replayed it over 20 times, and my housemates were seeing me just cringe and get frustrated. It's why are you playing the same mission?
Takumi, why?
Yeah. And I'm I have to be perfect, and then I end up losing a unit. I'm I'm just gonna let it go. and I think for me to do the NGP Pact, it just ironically it put me more at ease. Just because if I lose a unit, fine, whatever,
until you do.
Until I got to hard mode, it's in your shadows.
Until you have no healers left.
Yeah, then that's what gets tough. But
So it's been a while since we talked about it. The NJP Pact, but it was basically so I got this crazy idea when this game was coming out. Fire Emblem games usually add characters later on in the game, like high level power characters. Later in the story, they just kind of show up, and I've always kind of assumed that those characters were there in case you had killed everybody up till that point, and you'd lost a lot of characters and such. So I kind of came up with this idea that the right way to play a Fire Emblem game is just to let them die when they die, because Fire Emblem is known for its permadeath. It doesn't have to be. You can turn it to casual mode, and they all come back at the end of the round or whatever. But if you play it on classic mode, and you play the older Fire Emblem games, if a character dies, they die. They're out of your party for the rest of the game. That's it. So I got convinced that that's the right way to play Fire Emblem when this one game was coming out, and created the NJP Pact, which was just there's a rewind mechanic. You can't use it. There's a restart the level mechanic. You can't use it. You just got to deal with it, move on, and feel that. Little did I know, this is one of the few games that you actually don't get that many new units at the end of the game. But yeah, oops.
Yeah, and I think just to hover back towards some of the stuff that we were talking about, quality of life, and just comparing to, the previous Fire Emblem games to now, like in this Fire Emblem game, there's ways to fast travel to different locations or with characters, and like and also just I think just the UI, the way, like, well, besides how small the words are, other than that, like I think just the way everything is accessible, like, with intention. Like if I want to look at, my character's classes, and it's there. I see it, like it's listed like just beautifully. It feels right. And even the stats too. I mean, it does seem a bit overwhelming for sure. Like there's just so many stats that you have to keep track of, like defense, res, all that. But I think for what it's worth, like I think they do a very decent job just presenting the information. And yeah, I don't know. I think. Oh, and also like the marketplace, like, or when you want to buy stuff, like you can buy stuff while you're in the monastery, or you can buy stuff like before the battle. It's very accessible.
It's friendly to the player, and the reason I asked that question about how easy it felt to you guys was because older Fire Emblem games kind of beat you over the head with the tutorial missions.
Oh,
like
God, yeah.
I remember the first Fire Emblem game on Game Boy Advance that came to the West, the one with Hector and Lyn and such, had like a 10-chapter tutorial. Like it was very long, teaching you things, and it was kind of interesting. But this game doesn't. It kind of just throws you into it, but I still think it does a really nice, friendly job of kind of easing you in overall.
From an openness to new first time Fire Emblem players, I will give a couple points. The first one was we got a friend Ardwolf whose 10-year-old daughter has beaten this game.
Oh wow,
and
nice.
And so I mean it's definitely something that anyone who's determined can get through. But the other thing that I will say that's helped me a lot is apparently Fire Emblem is pretty popular on the internet. So if there's something you don't know, the first or second Googleable search result is incredibly detailed, is incredibly polished, because there are millions of Fire Emblem nerds out there who are really helpful and are writing it all down on the internet. So.
And who are generally fairly nice about the spoilers.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
Fairly nice. So I've got one more question. So I think safe to say we all like this game a lot. I ended up on the survey, I rounded a little bit here, but I ended up giving it a 10 on the survey. I think you guys hovered around 9, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yep.
gave it a 9 just because I think the way there's just some nitpicks. Like the text is a bit small, so it's a bit tough to read, like on a handheld. And I thought there were certain times where the monastery, like it was, I don't know, like I would have, I think to be like a 10, like maybe like a slightly change of pace in terms of like where you wander around would have been nice, but that's just like super nitpicky. I still think 9's a really good score in my book. So
Yeah, it would probably hover around a 9.5 for me. But I was limited, and it was closer to a 10 than a 9 for me. So there you go.
there you go.
I have a quick question for
Yeah.
the three of you guys. Does anyone have access to a Switch Lite?
Well, with my 18 Switch Lights. No, I'm kidding. No,
I don't have one.
Because I will say I played this in docked mode almost exclusively, primarily for the text reason. I like reading the text. I think the menus are really pretty, but I want to be able to read things. And I can imagine it being problematic on a Switch Lite.
I played it exclusively in handheld and had no issue, but I understand that's, it's a person-to-person thing.
Yeah,
I did it docked and handheld, and it was fine for both.
I primarily spent, I think, 90% in handheld or tabletop and then another 10% docked. So maybe I should have done 50-50. But
docked is definitely superior for this game, I think.
I would agree. I
do.
Yeah.
I do have one more question for you guys before we delve into spoilers. What house did you pick originally?
Ooh, well, I chose the Golden Deer. My favorite house so far.
And the Eagles take it because all three of us
correct
went Black Eagles. So,
yes.
But we have played the other routes, so this is not going to be as one-sided as it might seem. All hail Emperor Edelgard. Anyways,
I've gotten through 3/4 of Golden Deer and just under half of Blue Lions.
Nice.
I got through Black Eagles and Blue Lions.
I did Black Eagles. I watched some of Blue Lions with Daryl playing. I did Golden Deer, and I did the Ashen Wolves.
Nice. Whoa. And, for me, I just did Golden Deer, and I'm on Chapter 3 of Cinder Shadows.
Getting your butt beat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have fun with Chapter 3.
Chapter 3 is fun. I watched it. Okay.
I'm in for it, yeah.
So, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but there's some sirens going on.
Woo, woo,
You guys hear that?
woo.
No, that's, yeah.
Oh.
So at this point, if you have not beaten this game, if you have not fully completed this game, and you do not want to be spoiled, this is your warning.
This is just one route. If you've beaten one single route, I think that you're okay to listen.
Unless you really care about it, because each route is very different.
Yes.
We'll get into why, but just if you do care about spoilers, now is your time to exit. I will not hold it against you. Check us out on Twitter at NintendoJump. Join our Discord, which is linked there. If you have any questions for us or comments on our podcast, please send an email to us at NintendoJumpPodcast@gmail.com. And
The exits are clearly marked.
yeah, so that's it. This is your spoiler warning right here.
Can I just say one thing so Sergio can do a nice edit?
I'd be happy to edit this for you.
Oh, okay. Spoiler alert! You've been warned.
So, okay. If you are still with us, that means, boy, buckle in. So,
Ready.
I think the best way to start this, Nathan, what happens in this game?
Oh goodness. Well, I ended up with being Fire Emblem no houses. I was started at Black Eagles, and then for some reason my house leader decided to just abandon me, abandon the cause, abandon everything we were working to go towards, and I took it. I held it against her, and so now it's Fire Emblem 0 houses.
Oh no.
Did she abandon you? Or did
Yeah,
you abandon her?
I mean, fair
She
point,
left.
Daryl.
She-
Well,
I mean,
why
she-
did she leave though, Nathan?
Well, I should listen better.
She
There's
didn't
a lot of
leave
reasons why.
me. No, I'm kidding. So, yeah, I mean, just to get into the overall story. So you start as students in this monastery that is built in the middle of three separate entities. You have the Adrestian Empire to the south, the Holy Kingdom of Fargus to the north, and the Leicester Alliance to the east. For those of you checking me, I am not looking anything up right now. So
It's true. Can confirm.
the monastery is built in the
knows?
middle and is home to basically an officer's academy where students from each of these three regions go to learn the art of war for some reason together. I don't fully understand that. But
They were reading Sun Yu.
yeah. Sun Tzu. So the first part of the game consists of, a good number of chapters. It's actually more than half of the game. It consists of the academy phase, where you are getting to know these students from each of the houses. You have opportunities to recruit students from the other houses that you did not pick, as many as you can in a set amount of time. So this continues, and everybody's happy for the most part. But I started getting I started getting these Harry Potter vibes. Meaning in the Harry Potter movies, especially the first ones, you get the feeling that the students are never as safe as they probably should be for anything. There's always something super dark or something going on that maybe should not be. This game started really exuding that, and like, hey, let's send the 16-year-old to go kill bandits. Yeah, okay, game.
Dang it, Dumbledore.
And people start attacking. People start revolting against the church, who kind of controls this monastery.
At one point, you're told that an off-screen student, was just mysteriously lost last year, and they just didn't really worry about it.
Yeah, they thought she went home. No problem.
Yeah, they probably, it was okay.
Oh,
didn't
Monica.
So the story. And you guys can chip in here. The story for me in these first parts really started building suspense to, oh God, I don't know what's going to happen here. Did you guys kind of feel that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like everything was, going to HE double hockey sticks in a handbasket, and everyone was powerless to actually bring things back around. And I mean, it's a fun place to be if it's a strategy battle game. Think if everybody's getting along, I mean, then there's no opportunity to fight, so
all the fights are snowball fights.
Yeah, but like lances, not so useful in a snowball fight.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was really enjoyable to see the conflict ramp up when you come to this game for conflict.
Yeah, I think just even like me, Monica, and then just seeing this mysterious figure, and then like later on you find out, oh my God, it's Edelgard. Like what? And I was just like,
dude, spoiler. Oh wait, no, we're good.
We're good. Yeah, we're good. Yeah, they'll find out eventually.
Yeah, this continues on, and a bunch of crap happens, and Western faction of the church has this assassination plot against Rhea, who controls the monastery and kind of the entire church of Saros.
She's the Pope.
Yeah,
pretty much.
And she gets increasingly unsettling in some of the things that she says, like making examples of people who oppose the church and things like that.
She
executes instead of excommunicating.
Exactly. She says she's going to mete out punishment to all those who oppose her. Come on.
Yeah. So that starts getting a little unsettling, and you have these mysterious dark figures showing up, and eventually you are playing as Byleth, a mostly non-speaking, non-emoting character who is traveling with their father, who is upset at the fact that he's being called back to the monastery, and warns you against Rhea, and shows up, and then you get made a professor, and that kind of starts the gameplay loop, right? Mm-hmm. Then all this crap starts happening. These dark figures show up, demonic beasts show up, and eventually that leads to your dad, Geralt, being killed. And I've skipped a lot of stuff, as we're going to in this episode, but and then that was kind of the turning point for me. Like, Kevin, I mean, how did you react to that? Was that something you expected, or was it just kind of this game is going places? Like, how'd you feel about this entire build?
It just got more intense and as it went, and like I even felt like tension, even just like in the monastery, just trying to get as much information as I could, because like in the Golden Deer route, there's a lot of lore that gets explained. You hear about like who Rhea is, why is she hiding certain things, and just you get more information, in between chapters after chapters, and just like you get to learn about those who slither in the dark, and that's just something that it's just this build up, and you're you're battling, and then you find out more about the story, the lore, and then you go fishing for a bit to take a break, and then you find more about the lore. It's like a cycle, like all over again. And I just remember when I found out that Edelgard was like the quote unquote villain, like I was just like shocked. Like,
Hey, that's a disputed opinion
Yeah,
there.
well,
that
okay.
is.
I
We
mean,
will circle back
we'll
on
circle
that,
back,
sir.
but to me, I in the Golden Deer route, she was the villain, and a pretty cool one too. But
I played it. Disagree.
Yeah.
But I can, but I did spoil a little bit for me on, her motivation and just how the whole crest system was just broken and like
Okay. We're delving way deep.
Yeah,
I'm gonna bring you back to the first part.
okay.
So we're in the first part, and everything is still mostly happy, and then Gerald ends up dying. So you've learned a lot of stuff. You are contacting this green-haired girl named Sothis, who is linked to Byleth in a way that you don't really understand. You start learning more about her and figure out that she is apparently the goddess of the area, and then that all leads to this ultimate setup. So Rhea sets you up to in the Holy Tomb, which is an area of importance where the crest stones are actually stored. My goodness, there's a ton. And the Flame Emperor, a character who has been kind of antagonistic, showing up in places but not directly confrontational with you, but definitely hanging out with these dark figures and such.
And also a mysterious character at this point where the Flame Emperor apologizes for some occasional genocide. They definitely make an interesting possible villain there in that this leader of these forces doesn't have full control and doesn't agree with everything that they are doing all the time. And you're trying to figure out whether or not it's a ploy or if this is their genuine opinion. I really enjoyed that part.
Actually, at one point asking Byleth if he or she wants to join them. And then not believing you if you say yes. But anyways, yeah, so the Flame Emperor shows up and basically says, hey, all of these crest stones, which I will get into in a little bit, we're taking them because these things are bad. We're taking them, and if you don't want to die, hold still, pretty much. If you do fight, we'll knock you down. So over the course of that battle, you do fight them. You overwhelmingly beat them if you're my army, and then it is finally revealed that Edelgard, the house leader of the Black Eagles, was the Flame Emperor this entire time. Now what's funny is in the Black Eagles route, she kind of just shows up and says, oh yeah, I was the Flame Emperor. It's like immediately revealed. In the other two routes, there's actually a bit of suspense, especially in the Blue Lions route. There's a lot of suspense, and Dimitri kind of goes crazy when he figures this out. So at this point in the Black Eagles route, you have a decision. If you've done a couple earlier things, you have a decision after you've beaten this army to join Edelgard or to kill her. But spoiler, you don't kill her there, but you are told by Rhea to kill her, like in no uncertain terms. You're told to, and you kind of have a choice. So this is where we kind of differ. So Beck and I both went with the join Edelgard route as our first route. Napping Rat, Nathan, you went with the church route.
Well, I didn't really choose so much as I missed the dialogue choice. So she has
sucks.
an opportunity where she goes out, and actually I kind of liked it this way. I'll explain. So the she has an opportunity, I find out later, where she's going to go off and be secretly crowned emperor of her empire and kind of initiate plans with all the people she's working with. I never talked to her in the monastery that month. Then she's just gone as the mission is happening. And when she comes up, I will admit, I was surprised, but then the other students in her house are upset with her. They don't understand why she has put all this into motion, why she's caused all this bloodshed. So I went with the remaining members of my house. I thought if they don't like her, then I don't like her. But it didn't feel there was one point where I thought that a dialogue option would at least give me the choice to go along with her, and it didn't matter. She didn't believe me, and it was I didn't, because I didn't go to her coronation. I was forced into the church route, and I thought that was kind of fitting. It was if I'm choosing to be aloof and not really care as deeply as I should about the students that I'm supposed to be mentoring, then they're going to go off. They're going to do their own thing, and you're going to have less impact on them and on their lives. So I don't know. I thought it was a little poetic in that way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So Kevin, did this surprise you?
You mean having the two different just?
No, the actual Edelgard reveal. Did you see that coming at all?
I did not see that coming at all. I was just like, who could this be? And I'm just thinking how could, and just like, there's no way it could be one of the people, like one of the main three characters, and then boom, it just happened. Like, what?
And there were signs, and I've heard people say it was obvious to tell. I did, honestly, it floored me.
I thought it was Hubert.
It was not.
That'd be funny. And Dragon and I were playing this at the same time, and we were talking over the course, and I got to it, and I was like, oh dude, I need to talk to you, but just let me know when you see it. And I just kind of left it at that. And then he knew, and we had we had a good time talking about everything that could actually be. But yeah, it floored me. Beck, did you see it coming at all?
Sort of. So, video games in their artistic and musical styles tend to kind of foreshadow stuff like that. And I feel like the colors and how aloof Edelgard was, even as her professor, she was kind of aloof to you. I think that kind of set the tone. So when it happened, I did go to the coronation that Nathan was referring to. Wasn't really all that surprised. But having played Golden Deer and the reveal that happens, you're actually in combat with the Flame Emperor. You annihilate him, basically, and he takes off his mask, and you see that it's Edelgard. I can imagine that would be very jarring for somebody who has had very limited experience with Edelgard.
Yeah, because I don't know. Even so, like for me, especially with the Golden Deer route, like a lot was focused on the lore, and just like I did not pay as much close attention to the stories I should have, like in the first part, because I was so focused on just like learning more about the church and just the interaction between the characters, because for the Golden Deer route, a lot of it is just a mix of these like nobles and like the commoners, and just trying to find just accepting each other for who they are as you go through the game. And like I was more focused on, I guess, the character developments themselves rather than the Flame Emperor. I mean, I did, like, when I did see her, I'm like, oh, okay, cool, but who is this person? And then boom, Edelgard. I'm like, oh. So
yeah.
The funniest thing to me in terms of the foreshadowing there is that this game has a kind of color scheme to it. There's gold for the Golden Deer, blue for the Blue Lions, and then this black-red, two-tone scheme for the Black Eagles. Right. And the Flame Emperor is black and red. So
yeah, I mean, it was definitely telegraphed.
You're looking for it.
It was there.
Exactly.
If you're looking for it, there it is. It's color coded.
So yeah, and so like I said, at this point the story splits, and it splits based on a decision you made at the very start of the game. Now all three routes up to this point are very, very similar. You have different characters, but the story overarching, the missions are the same. The characters are different, and you as Kevin kind of got into, you're focusing on who you have and learning them and getting to know them. But at this point, so the story splits. If you chose to go with Edelgard, your next battle is attacking the monastery. If you chose to go with anyone else, your next battle is defending the monastery against Edelgard. Love that story split, by the way. Mm-hmm. It's a very cool battle too, on both sides. Actually, it's really interesting. And then at that point, you basically, at the end of that battle, get knocked out, and 5 years pass, and then you come back, and the world has gone to HE double hockey sticks, as Nathan would say. So at this point, where do you want to go with it, Beck? We can talk about the overall character motivations. We can talk about overall story. So Edelgard is now trying to unify Fodlan, and she is actively opposing the church. So she is now going to basically conquer everything in Fodlan, which is the area in which this whole game takes place. It's not the only country in the game. There's actually 4 or 5 others mentioned. And then on the Blue Lion side, Dimitri is completely shocked by Edelgard and goes into full murderous rage mode. And
well, he was already in revenge mode from the very beginning. In the first 10 chapters of Blue Lions, he talks about being orphaned and wanting, the reason he came to the monastery was to learn how to fight better in order to avenge his parents, like, Batman. So I feel like the murderous rage was always there. They did a good job, at least, of
it definitely comes
he told
out.
you he wasn't all right.
I heard that in the second part, if you are the Blue Lions, your support levels with Dimitri are non-existent. Like, you cannot level them anymore. Is that true? Like, that is
for a while.
For a while, right?
So the full Dimitri arc is meant to be kind of a redemption arc.
Okay.
So for a little while, he is to himself a lone wolf, and you can't teach him, which is interesting. It takes away a mechanic that you've had the entire game. You can't teach him, you can't support anyone with him, and he's just kind of there. And now you can use him in battle, and he's very strong. But yeah, he has emotional issues that he's working through at the moment. And then so the Golden Deer, and at this point, Claude, being the smart guy that he is, basically starts asking questions and goes, "Oh man, what is going on?" And that route actually kind of models after the Blue Lions, but I'll let the guys who actually played that route, so Beck and Kevin, what'd that feel like?
I liked it because he was more about unifying than the other routes seemed to be. I thought that it was more simple. It wasn't so somber as everything else I had seen in the game. Like, Claude is kind of a jokester. He likes to get along with people, except for Ingrid. And it's just, it was so starkly different from everything else I had played.
And that's
yeah.
Oh, sorry. And that's a good point, because like, even my first impression of Claude, like, he's just very like jokey and just seemed like a fun guy to be around. But you knew there was something up with him, because like, he just had this like aura of like, I'm hiding something, but I don't want to show it. And he was just hiding out with this like fun persona. And like, going through the Golden Deer, it's like, it's literally like an epic fun tale. It's not as dramatic and as like, as Beck mentioned, like somber as like, the Black Eagles or Blue Lions, which I think is great, because I feel like it's such a nice take on a game that has been fairly dramatic over the years in the series. And like, even the way he talks, like, it's very anachronistic. Like, I don't think they would say like, "Oh, what up, Teach?" Like, I would not imagine them saying that back in the medieval times. So I think that really relates to me, because like growing up in Southern California, like, that's kind of how we talked. And then the whole unifying thing, there's this conversation you'll have with like Marianne, like when you get to like an A-rank support conversation level. Claude mentions that he talks about a story of a young boy who was hated just for existing, and that really gets to me, because it's like, oh my god, like, what is going on here? And then you find out later that he's of a mixed race, and like, the countries that his families belong to hate each other, and it's just like, wow, like the motivation for him to unify everyone. I mean, that's it. Like, it was ingrained from the very beginning, like the way he grew up, and just wanting to have everyone come together as one nation. Because like, when you start learning about the Lesser Alliance, it's literally a group of houses that they're all different, but there's not one unifying leader. And I think Claude wanted to be that person. And so the whole thing about prejudice, and it's I think it's a very relatable thing, especially in today's world. Like, everybody is born with like, different things that they carry, like burdens, and just like, like generations of like, history. But there's just times where like, yeah, we need to stand together, and together as one, like we're stronger. And I just felt like they did a great job, like as a Golden Deer. And I don't know. For me, I'm not big on the whole like, oh, like we're super dramatic, or just like there's a lot of nobles and they think they're mighty and mighty and all that. But I just felt like Claude's character was just very relatable, and I think that's why I chose Golden Deer. So
I think the game needed a jokester.
yeah.
So everyone else is way too serious, and so he's helpful even when you're not in his house.
I find that interesting though, because I kind of like the seriousness of Dimitri and Edelgard, and I felt that Claude lacked sincerity, and that bothered me, as he was kind of the de facto leader, and I didn't even think that in his house he was the most qualified for that position. I definitely think Hilda ran circles around him, both logistically and likability for me. But I think that was an interesting tactic for them to use. Yes, there is no defined strongest member of the Golden Deer.
Mm-hmm.
Claude had a lot of the lineage for it, and people liked him, and that was what was important.
Yeah, just speaking honestly, he irritated the crap out of me, and he just does the entire game, and I don't know why. It's just like everything he says, it's like milk and honey, and you don't believe it, and it's just like, ugh. Like just I don't know. And that was true for just like every run. Something about it.
But to have the darkness underneath that Kevin was alluding to makes that richer, that storyline richer. You don't like him; he's not sincere. But that's because he's not being sincere.
Yeah, well, he is literally hiding his past. He is the son of the King of Almyra, which is at war at times with the Lesser Alliance. So, yeah, it makes sense. And he's kind of the leader, but he's hiding his background. So it's interesting.
Yeah, just before we continue, I really, and those are good points, because Claude's the guy who just wants to be accepted. I think that's just the underlying notion of like finding acceptance, and like if he's able to figure out a way to lead his people, just different houses to unify, like it would fulfill his dream to be that that leader that he wanted to be. But yeah, I mean it's it's quite a bit. And I can see why y'all find him irritating. He does have a very particular personality.
Well, I almost feel like he doesn't. So I almost feel like he in particular uses the people around him more than he actually like collaborates with them. Like he treats them as
pawns.
If I say nice things to you, I will get you to do stuff for me.
But Hilda's the same, and I like her more. I don't dislike Claude. I just like Edelgard better.
So I'm gonna jump a little bit back to the overall story, and at this point, I can kind of just accelerate it. A lot of stuff happens, and it depends on which route you go. So I'm just gonna jump all the way to the end of the games, and we can start from there. So if you chose to side with Edelgard, your war is against ultimately everyone. So you do end up fighting Claude and then Dimitri, and then Rhea. So your final opponent is actually Rhea in her dragon form, which, hey, surprise, Rhea is a dragon.
That caught me by surprise. I apparently it's a Fire Emblem thing, not having played
there's a lot of
Emblem,
dragons in this series.
Yeah,
didn't realize that.
Very it's a motif.
Yeah, so your final war who is against Rhea, who literally goes crazy over the course of the game. She starts out a little unhinged and then loses it by the end. And eventually Edelgard unites Fodlan, goes to war eventually with, we'll get to this in a second, but those who slither in the dark afterwards. And the game ends there. The game ends with her going to war, which I felt was like a little bit of a miss on the game. I would have liked to play those instead of just reading about them. But yeah, that's Edelgard. So she unites the kingdom. She steps down as leader, which I think is important, and I'll get back to that. And then she goes to war against the Slithers, as they will come to be known. If you play against as Dimitri, he goes through this very nice character arc of basically being filled with rage and revenge and darkness and Batman all over. And then eventually coming to, through the death of another character and the help of Byleth, coming to this redemption of, I need to be better.
So we're in spoiler mode. Death of another character. Which one are you talking about?
Rodrigue, so Felix's dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I hope you guys don't mind if I'm spoiling you guys.
We're in Spoilercast. No, go for it.
Yeah, you signed up for this.
Yes.
So, yeah, Rodrigue dies protecting Dimitri, and Dimitri then, kind of has to deal with things a little bit.
And so that's his uncle, is that correct?
No, I don't think that they're related. I think that it's like a family friend.
Not uncle by marriage or any.
No.
It's complicated.
Yes. It's all complicated, and I'm kind of trying to keep track of all the characters. Anyways, he goes through a redemption arc that seems a little, like, honestly, if I'm being honest, it was a little fast for me. It was just like, oh, I'm better now. And then that was kind of it. A little rushed, but whatever. And then he takes back the kingdom of Fargus. He then marches on Edelgard, and your final boss is actually like a monster form of Edelgard. Hey, and you end up killing her. That's pretty much it. That route does not deal with the Slithers at all. It's actually kind of funny.
No ICBMs, nothing like that.
No. Okay, now we're gonna get into the Golden Deer, which this is the route that like almost serves up all the lore on a platter for you, and it's just it's crazy. Having played the rest of the game and having all these questions to just watch it, just like, oh yeah, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And as I understand it, the church route is actually very similar in what it reveals. So the Golden Deer go through basically a lot of the same type missions that the Blue Lions do, but a different point of view with Claude and the group there, culminating in eventually you do defeat Edelgard, and then you move on and you have found out about this organization called Those Who Slither in the Dark. I keep saying that, or the Slithers, and Claude then takes his army to wipe them out. Pretty much. So in 2 of the runs, and Nathan, correct me if I'm wrong, in Silver Snow, do you attack those who slither in the dark?
Yes, you're referring to the mission where you go underground and there's techno and robots. And,
and
Yes.
it's a completely different style
That
from
one.
the rest of the game.
The city without lights.
That was pretty cool. I liked that map a lot.
It was. And so that map, so in 3 of the routes, you attack the Slithers and wipe them out. In the Blue Lions, you forget that they exist, and it's no big deal. And then Claude actually culminates with the resurrection of a character called Nemesis, who was shown in the opening cutscene of the game and gets into some deeper lore I'll talk about in a second. But
He looks like old God of War.
Yeah.
Kratos.
Old Kratos. And then Silver Snow, your final boss, and Nathan, tell us.
At least for you're talking about the church route here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they earned it, but all of a sudden Sedith, who's like the right hand of the Pope, decides that the Pope is crazy and we have to kill the Pope. It was surprising. It definitely was, based on what they gave you, what needed to happen, but I'm not sure it was earned, at least in the church route.
Did it kind of feel like, hey, we need a final boss?
Yeah, I remember his eyes are getting big in this like cutscene, and he says, "We have to kill Rhea," and I was like, "Really?
We do?"
If you say so, all right,
That's weird.
It is. And otherwise, the church route and the Golden Deer route are like chapter for chapter, almost exactly the same. I think there's 2 chapters that are actually different, and then the rest of the game is literally the same thing with different characters. So you have the Black Eagle characters, and you have Sedith earlier, and that's pretty much it.
The thing I like the most about that is once we've decided to attack the monastery, attack the Pope, they turned and I guess you were on this map before, but they turned the monastery that was your base camp into a battlefield, and it seemed like they tried real hard on that. It was pretty cool to, you've spent, if you're like me, 50 hours running around this monastery over the course of the game, and now all of a sudden it is a battlefield.
That is cool. That's a very good point.
Awesome.
So all that out of the way, I was trying to rush through that So now we're going to get into the fun part. Who was the quote-unquote villain of this game, in your opinion?
Oh, that's, from the Going Deer route, like, I would say Edelgard, but then, as I've read later on about her motivation to, go against the church, 60-40 split, man. I mean, Edelgard, Rhea. I mean, Rhea did rule with an iron fist for sure, and um, that's hard. I I I don't know. Yeah, that's tough. I gotta flip a coin for this one because like I think both of them had the reasons why they went against each other and just what they thought was right. Whether it's blaming the crest system or just trying to defeat what each of them thought was evil. So
I feel like it's definitely Rhea from at least the story bits that I've seen. The parts that really frustrated me is she's 1,000 million years old. Dragons live forever. This is news to me, and you find out that for thousands of years here, there's been a caste system with those with crests are nobles and those without might not be, but it's a flip of the coin, so you really don't have certainty even if you're on the haves side of the haves not divide. You've got all these people in the church who are seemingly like Mercedes really there to help people. They want to feed and clothe the poor and heal. There's magic in this game. They want to heal sickness, and she's just using all of them. She's really using everyone in the civilization to maintain a status quo as punishment to all humans for killing off her kind. And I mean, I can understand the revenge motivation, but in this game and in Fodland, she is the original source of all conflict and of all racism and all of these class divides, class warfare. She did it all. She wanted all of it, and she profited from it. So I guess that's
keeping in mind that it's at least heavily implied that the crests, which are now defining who the nobles actually are versus the commoners, generally defined by who has a crest, and the crests are basically a source of power for people. Those all came basically from Rhea and her people.
I thought they were the hearts of the dragons. I think she said that.
Yeah.
So then I got one question, especially for you two, Daryl and Beck, especially y'all play the Crimson Fire route. So Edelgard, she has this motivation to destroy, like just to beat the church, right? Like destroy everything about it. But I don't understand why she needed to, take over the other, like the Lesser Alliance and Fargus. Like, was that necessary? Like, I thought that maybe they could find a way to work together to defeat the church, like, and not just kill off Claude or Dimitri. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know. I didn't play that route, so I don't know if that is accurate. But I just felt like, if she wants to take over everything, like, I don't know that that's justified. I can see why she wanted to destroy the church, but everything though, I don't know. Like, it's kind of mixed for me.
I actually have thoughts on that, having seen just about everything in the game. But first, a bunch of the listeners who have answered are really divided on this. So, OK Boomer and Lightning Naga both think that Edelgard is the villain, just because she had good intentions but was too violent about it.
Right.
We have some people that hedge on either the church or Edelgard, depending on which route you do, like Darkus and Froti. Having seen everything myself, I definitely think that those who slither in the dark are the most at fault here, with a little bit of Rhea, because she keeps people in the dark, and I think ignorance is not bliss, and that's not okay, lady. Yeah, so I think the thing that really sealed the deal for me with this was in the Golden Deer route. When you finally face Edelgard, there is a heartbreaking scene where she's begging you to finish the job that you started by killing her. And right before your final blow to her, she says, "I wanted to walk with you." And it's so hard. Even if I hadn't played Edelgard and liked that character, I think it would have been difficult for me. But after that happened, you kind of learn about these people, those who slither in the dark, the slithers, I guess. how they've been doing these experiments on children to try and manipulate how creststones and divine beasts, that's Breath of the Wild.
Crossover.
Yeah, exactly. No, how they wanted to manipulate how crests and creststones and all of that lore were being used. And Lysithea, who's
Yes.
in the Golden Deer, was one of the children that was experimented on. Flayn, who is Seth's daughter, spoilers, was experimented on. And Edelgard was experimented on. And I feel like the Golden Deer lore suggests that Edelgard had to do it out of her own volition. And that scene just resonates because it seems like she did not want to be there. She did not want to be doing that. Not completely.
So I think in order to actually answer the question, I need to go into the lore that's maybe not as well explained in the game. So when I say lore in the game, you really build it yourself with the support conversations of all the characters, all the little conversations, the stuff in the library in the game. Like, there's so much. One of the things I really like about the game is that it builds this world that has thousands of years of history and multiple countries that you don't visit just to build the lore of this game. Do we fully understand everything? No. And that's great because we don't have to. This is a living world. It kind of feels like that, and I love that. But to get into the stuff that we've kind of pieced together. So Edelgard was born to the Emperor in the Adrestian Empire. And this was at a time of turmoil in the Empire, referred to in the game as the Insurrection of the Seven, in which the major dukes and houses of the Empire seized control from the Emperor and basically made him a figurehead. This was around the same time that the Slithers really started the operations of starting to experiment on children, which led to a ton of kids dying while they were trying to, quote, create the perfect emperor, and experimenting with crest stones and such. And we'll get back into that. So at that point, Edelgard's uncle, who is known in the game as Lord Arundel, and again, I'm not looking this stuff up, so there you go, flees potentially at the Emperor's request. He takes Edelgard to the Kingdom of Fargus and the King Lambert of the Kingdom of Fargus, along with her mother, who was at least courting the Emperor. Her name is Patricia, or Anselma. She actually changes her name on the trip. So, Patricia, Lord Arundel, and Edelgard all moved to the Holy Kingdom of Fargus to meet King Lambert. So Patricia starts courting or gets married to or something King Lambert himself, which makes her the stepmother of Dimitri. She's also Edelgard's mother, so they are basically half siblings at this point. And there are some, especially in the Blue Lines route, there are some actually fairly touching scenes of them as children. Okay, this is where it gets crazy.
I want to cut in before it gets crazy.
Yeah.
If anyone is super interested in this, I presume you've at least played part of the game. There are Fire Emblem Wikipedias that do a decent job of trying to answer your questions. They have two sections. The top section is kind of what you would know early in the game, and then the bottom section underneath a hey, this has spoilers spot. And I guess I feel like I'm losing you a little bit because I maybe don't know everything in there, but I think the internet is very helpful in filling in the blanks here.
Yeah, I am not. I picked up some of this. I didn't pick up all of it. The internet has pieced some stuff together that was really super interesting, which is why I'm saying it. So, okay, at this point, it's highly likely that Dimitri and Edelgard are actually being prepared and courted to be married and join the Empire and the Kingdom of Fargus together. It's pretty standard noble type stuff. Okay, so we keep mentioning those who slither in the dark. You see them as the crazy colored skin people. They're like albino and they have like black eyes and such during the course of the game. They have a penchant for killing people and taking their place and basically taking over their body. And you'll hear multiple mentions in game of this person just suddenly started acting differently. That it's very hinted at that happened to Lord Arundel, and the leader of the Slithers, whose name is Talus, took over Arundel's position at that point. So he basically took over, body snatcher style. And at that point, Arundel completely switches. He changes his course. He takes Edelgard back to the Empire, where they start experimenting on her with the support of the dukes who overthrew her father. They eventually do lead to her having a second crest, which does shorten her lifespan and changes her hair color. The same thing that happened to Lysithea. So Lysithea has 2 crests. Edelgard has 2 crests. They both have shortened lifespans, presumably. And that's where we are until Edelgard actually takes power. All right, so the Emperor eventually gets sick and is on his deathbed and hands the Empire to Edelgard, who instantly seizes power, takes power back from the dukes and lords of the Empire, and starts reforming the Empire because it is messed up. Because those people are awful to their citizens, they're awful to each other, they're awful to kind of the world at that point. The Slithers are rampant, so she has to put the Empire back together. My supposition is that the only way that she could actually seize power and come to anything is with this Unite Fodlan mission, right? So she's trying to seize back the Empire's power and go on this mission. Meanwhile, she's seen the damage that these crest stones have done, and that this gap between nobles and commoners has created. So she goes on this mission to basically destroy the lines between nobles and commoners, and that is her actual goal. So what I found was kind of interesting in what you were saying, Kevin, is that her goal and Claude's goals are not that dissimilar. She feels like she has to be the one to actually enact the change, or it won't happen. And given that statement and how the world is at the point that we start the game, I kind of agree.
Well, Claude is reactionary, right? He starts to want to unify Fodlan and Elmira and all the other places after things have been kind of left in shambles. Yeah, so
yeah, that's true.
In that case, Edelgard is the instigator. Claude is the reaction.
Yeah, but I'm kind of like, the church is very strong and the church is kind of messed up, as we said. The world is kind of messed up. There's a huge gap between nobles and commoners, which is kind of an overarching theme of the game. And there's no signs of anything actually changing it until she changes it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think just that makes things a lot more sense now. Yeah, because I was always curious, like, why does she have to do like the whole like all Fodlan? I mean, and now I think just given, and thank you for like just saying all that. It was actually pretty amazing to listen to. It's just like hearing about her story and like her like just what she's been through and her motivations. I mean, yeah, I can see why she acted the way she did, to go through just destroying the church, and basically.
Well, so the church is just kind of it's the people's reliance on the church, which is kind of creating this reliance on crest stones and kind of creating this gap, this cultural gap. And I think, so I think that she's a logical, calculating character, and I think that she just kind of run it through in her mind and say, hey, I don't have time for diplomacy. I don't think this is going to work at all with the people in play. And I don't, again, with how the world is when we start the story, I kind of agree.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying, it's always best to go to war and conquer nations, but in this current state, if you want to make changes in this world, I see why she did it.
I still blame Rhea for all of this. I think she started it.
That's why I'm split. But I mean, yeah, like with the way that Edelgard carried herself, like there's definitely that confidence that just told herself, like, yeah, I'm just gonna do all this stuff and it's gonna happen. I'm like, oh, okay, great.
She carries herself with almost with the understanding of a very, very hard life that she's seen how bad things are and has just come to the realization, hey, I've got to do something, and this is what I know I can do.
Yeah.
And as the only surviving descendant of the emperor of her empire, she's uniquely in a position to do something at this moment. She may be a ticking time bomb in terms of dying young because of all the medical experimentation, but she's perhaps uniquely positioned just through her lineage and the fact that all of her siblings died during the experimentation to do something. I mean, I'm sympathetic.
Yeah, and to kind of back that up with one more point, she, as soon as she seizes power, she doesn't want power. She's not power hungry. She's not trying to rule everything, because as soon as she seizes it and puts it in order, in her opinion, she hands it to somebody that she deems suitable and then basically retires. Like, she does not stay the leader of Fodlan in her route. That's not what she wants. That's not what she goes for. She wanted to literally fix it.
Is that what Dimitri wanted? Because Claude certainly did. Claude
Yeah.
wanted to be the leader. Did Dimitri want to be the leader?
Dimitri wanted to stop Edelgard, and once he did, that was pretty much it.
Okay.
Now, he does end up in a very high level of power.
Okay.
But yeah, Claude actually, depending on your actual story, yeah, he becomes one of the leaders of Fodlan, if not the leader.
There's a conversation with Byleth where he asks basically who would be the best, and if you say him, you get the little doop and the little hearts go up. So,
Yeah, with the Gondir route, I just want to mention real quick, like, I didn't really get to interact with Dimitri that much, which I was a little disappointed.
Oh,
'cause-
dude, he disappears.
Yeah, I'm just like, where's this guy?
they
Like, I
do
wanna-
him dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he dies off screen, quote unquote, then he shows up, and then he dies off screen again. Like, what?
Yeah, I'm just like, yo, I want to talk to this guy, but
It's kind of like in the Blue Lions run, Rhea disappears after the battle at Garreg Mach and does not show up again. Like, she's like mentioned in the ending, and that's literally it. Like, she doesn't show up again.
I do like that there is enough difference in the routes. I mean, if we want to talk about mechanics for just a second, this is a very engaging story. It's confusing as all get out, but I'm in. Like I am intrigued, and I still want to know more about this game and about this region. I do really like that in the New Game Plus, if you are most interested in the story here, you can set it on an easier difficulty, and you don't have to do a lot of the optional things that they allow you to make up for it
Menial
with
tasks. Yeah.
And I think that they're giving you, maybe they could have made it even more different, but they're giving you enough reasons, enough payback, a reward for playing house number 2, house number 3, route number 4. And I don't know, I think that's a clever arrangement of the story, of this unbelievably complicated and nuanced story that they want to give some sort of a broad overview from a single point of view for those who want to spend 50, 70 hours in this game. And then if you're really in deep, they will they do provide their unknown things that you need to go to the internet, to the other routes in order to figure out.
Yeah, but I also think that a main strength of this game is just the strength of the first route, like whatever you pick. And so I asked a question mostly because I was curious in our survey of what house did you pick originally, and then what other houses did you play. Then I asked the question, do you still feel most aligned with your initial house pick? And 88% of people said yes.
The only person who didn't was Dragon.
I said no as well.
You said no. So I
sorry.
did want to ask you about that, Nathan. What do you mean?
The thing that I was most bummed about in the way that I did it was that I feel like Crimson Flower, your choice as at the time skip, would have been more fulfilling. And I'm still going to go back and do it. In the next year or two, this is a long game. But I will admit to some FOMO, fear of missing out, where I liked Sedith. Didn't really like his little sister, / daughter. But I did feel like I had made the wrong choice, and that as more was revealed and Edelgard's motivations became clearer, more justifiable, and perhaps more righteous in my viewpoint, I was kind of bummed I wasn't on her side.
Yeah,
Yeah, come over. Yeah.
but then
Flane is the villain of this game.
Yeah.
oh man. But
Hey,
then
fun fact. So, way in the past in this game, there was a war between Nemesis and the 10 Elites and Saros and the 4 Saints. It's not necessarily stated, except in some very small portions, but the 4 Saints are 2 monsters that you meet in Paralogs, the Unmovable and the I forget what the other one is called. The Claude meets him.
The bird thing.
Yeah,
Something of the wind, eagle of the wind, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. The other 2 Saints,
Just call them divine beasts.
Yeah,
Exactly.
The other 2 Saints are actually Setheth and Flame. So the 4 statues that you can offer renown to increase your stats and stuff, 2 of them are Setheth and Flame. So I thought that was silly.
I enjoy with a lot of these, smaller story bits. If you do want to go back, take the time and play Route 2, Route 3, there's so much foreshadowing that you missed that you couldn't have known, but it's pretty funny. I will admit, on my Blue Lions route this past week, I went over to those statues and Setheth is standing there and he's talking about how great his daughter is. Saint Sethlene, and he's like, I have a particular fondness for that one. And,
yeah, you do. That's hilarious. I didn't actually notice that. One I liked was when you end up at the monastery at the first part, because of your story with Geralt, which we don't really need to get into. Geralt basically fled the monastery with you as a baby, with Byleth as a baby, and then he lies to Rhea about Byleth's origins and mother and all that. When you first get to the monastery, you completely miss that the first time. But yeah, my child's mother passed away in a bandit attack or something. Completely lying. It was really funny.
And Rhea believes none of it because she's crazy.
she sees
and she
all.
did something nuts. She did something crazy.
So, are there any other pieces that you guys figured out? And I do want to get into the actual DLC chapters because I think that's important because that came out soon. Is there any other bits of story that, like, obviously there's still a lot of question marks. There's still a lot to answer the question that I went back. I had never actually answered myself. I think that the Slithers are the main enemies, and I asked that question because in prior Fire Emblem games, quote, Fire Emblem villain was a kind of a trope, right? It was always the guy who was like scowling and angry and ugly looking. Always. It was really funny. In this game, it's really not. It's very open to interpretation, exactly what you think. And I thought that was really cool. And it's very, very shaded by your first choice in the actual game, which is really funny. Yeah, I just like that. But are there any other bits of story or lore or anything you guys want to talk about before we get to the DLC?
I enjoy. I'm trying to find it in my notes here, but there's a section where I just started with the Blue Lions house last week, and Dimitri keeps on asking if you're insane or if you've gone mad. And at least knowing what I know now from the routes that I've played, it is hilarious in retrospect to hear so many of these little one-off lines that he's calling you insane.
If everybody else feels crazy, Dimitri, it might be telling you something.
I like the Batman thing. He is like Batman.
It's just about
that's
perfect.
pretty cool. Yeah.
I'm not going to spoil particular conversations, but I would say if you play the Golden Deer, pay attention to how the Flame Emperor responds to some of the other antagonists and then what people in the monastery say right after. I think that's pretty cool. Like, some of the story is very much hidden from knights like Aloise and Setheth and other people, and if you ping in on them, it's an interesting read.
Yeah, I agree. I actually liked some of the stuff with the Flame Emperor was just kind of like, the first time he, quote unquote, asks you to join him, I honestly hovered on that choice for a little bit, and I was like, wait, is this a real thing? Can I join him? Yeah, I tried to. It didn't work. But yeah, and then Edelgard asks you about it later. She's like, well, what did you do? It was so funny.
The Flame Emperor's voice is also, if once you know the reveal, is distinctively Edelgard,
Yes.
just tweaked.
Yeah,
You can definitely hear her underneath there.
it's the same phrasing and everything.
The very distinct S's. Professor.
Yeah. But the only other thing I wanted to touch on is just the sheer... So we talked about the strength of the characters, but all of the characters just have so much lore internally with them. So Annette is looking for her long-lost father, who is Gilbert, who abandoned his post because the king of Fargus got murdered under his watch. Petra is basically a captive of the Empire from a different country and learning the language and not very good at it, but still extremely alert, like endearing about it. Other characters are from different countries. Claude, as we said, is the king of Elmira's son.
I'm all in on Dedue. 10 chapters in, I'm really curious as to how he turns out. He showed up briefly in the church route.
Yeah, he's so cool, and I killed him in my route, and it's so sad.
I love Dedue. I love him.
There's a line. He likes to cook. He likes flowers. And for this big, macho dude who doesn't speak very much, it's kind of, these are cool aspects. But he says in the greenhouse, Dusker's a dead land now. Its flowers were trampled by the boots of all the soldiers. However, seeing this blossom brings back some memories. And I when he said that, and it just happened a few days ago, but I was just like, all right, I'm in. He can't die. I must find out more. I must get closer to this guy.
Hey, from my experience, keep him away from mages, man. It's not pretty.
Oh man,
his resistance is like 2, 3.
His people got framed for the murder of the king. Like, it's just every little character has all this story around them that's so cool. And
all the knights don't like him. They all say, don't trust anybody from Dusker. Random NPCs that aren't even named are telling you that he's bad news.
Even Ingrid doesn't trust him, and she's talking to you about him. And so, this game is so cool.
He tells Byleth not to talk to him, that it would cause rumors.
Yeah. I do find we're talking about FOMO earlier in preparation for this podcast, starting an NJP pact route. You're talking about Annette, you're talking about Ingrid. The pact that you came up with has deprived me of that story because they're all dead.
It's all your fault, Daryl.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well,
Daryl is the real Rhea.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if he's going to sleep again.
Oh no.
I guess what, I can deal with it.
It was hard for me personally because I lost a lot of the heavy armor characters. For some reason, I just keep losing them, like Hilda, and then Ash, who became a heavy armor character for me. No, and it was I don't know. I was like, okay, I just got to move on. But I really do like Petra as a character, not just because she is just a critical hit queen, but y'all mentioned just the way that she speaks, and it's just very particular, and it's funny. It's just, it keeps me at ease. I don't know. It has a really interesting presence, and I think yeah.
So we asked who were your 3 favorite characters on the survey too, and I think we all kind of came up with answers. Raise your hand if you had Petra as one of them.
My hand is raised.
Yes.
I'm raising my hand.
I am not raising my hand.
Oh, get out, man.
You're the real Rhea.
Get out, man. Petra was an extremely commonly loved character, which is really cool to see.
Claude as well. Swilly said so. Okay, Boomer.
I forgot what I put, actually. I hope I picked Petra.
Rochi.
I don't think you put anything because I think you said you would talk about it on the podcast.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So you can make up anything and we won't be able to refute you right now.
Well,
I'm with Lightning Naga here, who also likes Seteth.
I really like Petra, but I also liked I really like Ignatz. The guy, the guy would just want to be a painter, man. But he was actually one of my strongest.
He was a simple soul. I liked it.
Yeah, and just.
But that haircut,
yeah.
Jeez, I don't even want to look at him.
It's better after the time skip.
Oh,
it does get better.
Yeah.
I think I killed him off in the Golden Deer kind of on purpose because it just
no.
didn't see anymore.
You gave him the Lorenz treatment, yeah. Poor guy.
Oh, Lorenz, he's so dramatic, and just the way he raises his hand, like he's just like the greatest noble in the world. I don't know, I didn't really care for him that much, and then later on, I'm like, all right, this guy's a bit nicer now in part two, whatever. But, yeah, he wasn't one of my favorite characters, but I grew to like him a bit more. I thought Lysithea was very interesting. Like she just had this high expectation of people and just demanded like excellence, and then just
She's a very interesting character. There's a lot of depth there.
yeah, and then you find out later, like as y'all mentioned, like she was experimented on. That's why she has two crests. Her presumably her lifespan has been shortened, and it's just like oh my god, like she's
Lysithea is Llama's favorite character.
yeah.
Even with the raw deal she's given, she makes the most of what she has, and he wanted to make her the best she could be as her professor.
Oh man, that hits me pretty
Yes.
good. I was like, all right, yeah, no, and that's man, just the emotional investment that we can all have in these characters, like it's just amazing. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah.
Being asked who my three favorite characters are actually gave me a lot of thought, and I've actually discussed this with Daryl all throughout this week. My three favorite characters are Hilda, Petra, Dapper Dan Man likes Petra as well, and Constance, who is part of the DLC package. She's incredible. We're going to talk about that later.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Here we go.
And
Is she the vampire?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
What's interesting about this game that I didn't really think of until I started playing the Golden Deer and got to recruit everybody that I wanted to recruit. I recruited everybody but Cyril, Aloise, Dudu and Dimitri, Edelgard, and Hubert, which you can't really recruit those four. I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think those are the only people that I wasn't able to recruit. And so I had a huge pool of characters to choose from, and I chose 3 female characters. And I would greatly suggest that any female looking for representation in gaming play Three Houses. It makes you feel pretty good because the females are strong. They're often very logical. Edelgard is one of the most pragmatic characters I've ever encountered in gaming. And I just think that it's so inclusive to have female characters who aren't whiny, who aren't annoying, who actually dig in and work really hard and have incredible backstories like Lysithea, like Petra. It's a really cool thing that Nintendo did for female gamers, I think.
Yeah.
This game seems to be like a Bechdel-Wallace test star, where there's a lot of female characters. They have interactions between, woman to woman or woman to girl that don't involve men, or don't involve, any romantic relationship around men. It's pretty well done, and it is rare, even on the Switch. I as you say that, I'm thinking
it's
about... It's
rare in gaming. I asked the question, name a main female video game character. I mean, as we talk about characters that could get into Smash, a lot of people jump to all the male characters because there just aren't that many good female characters. It's a problem in gaming right now. I mean, you can think of a few, but it's very, very lopsided. And I think Fire Emblem has always done a pretty good job with the females in its games. In this one in particular, they are just plain better. Like all 3 of my favorite characters. If you guys are checking the sheet, I'm going to make one adjustment. It's Petra, Annette, and Edelgard would be all female. And if I were to go to number 4, that'd be Leonie, female. All of my favorite characters were 2, just because they're interesting. All the males, this game kind of gave us with a couple exceptions, kind of gave us a bad pool of guys.
Yeah, I actually think that the female characters were stronger than the male characters in this game overall. Like, it was just clear cut. I mean, a lot of the male characters were very tropey, and I can recall one female character from a different game, Final Fantasy 13, Lightning, but she doesn't come nowhere as close as to the depth and the strength of the female characters that are presented in Fire Emblem Three Houses. So, this is a great example of how a game should be. Having these type of characters, and I hope that more games can follow this example because it was very well done. And like my three characters, like man, I mean Petra. We're talking about like, okay, well. Ignatius, I'm gonna say right now, Ignatius is not one of my favorite three.
Aw,
He's
poor
been
guy.
demoted. He's been demoted.
But you like Leone a lot.
Somehow I don't think
do like
Ignatz would
Leone.
list himself as a top 3 character.
I do like Leone a lot, but for some reason, something really it was strange because she was my well, in the end, like I chose her as my partner, but like she just had this obsession with like Gerald. And
Gerald?
I'm like, man, like okay, but what about me though? You know what I'm saying? Like just I can see why she has that admiration for someone as strong as Gerald and
For the strongest knight in history, according to the game, yeah.
yeah. So
Well, he was dragon aided,
She was
dragon
always
blood
taking
infused.
care. She was always taking care of everyone else. Geralt was the first one to take care of her.
Yeah.
that's true. And yeah, like she was like my ace, my strongest unit. Like I can always rely on her for like any battle, like my tank. Although if I were to make her a heavy armor character, I don't know.
Oh, she'd probably die
She'd probably
instantly. You put her out there, you'd be like, okay, go get all, you're dead.
She's a good holy knight.
Heavy armor doesn't seem very good in this game.
Or maybe,
No.
or maybe it's just me, because like I just have such a hard time with heavy armor characters for some reason. Like it just
There's a
Is that a Fire Emblem thing overall? The whole series?
They just don't move very far, and they're weak to mages, which the games tend to like in certain aspects. This game kind of went mage crazy.
oh yeah.
the Golden Deer had a ton of
There's
mages.
so many mages everywhere, so yeah, they're like, it's like the Simpsons thing. It's like, I'm in danger, like. So Kevin, who was your number 3? I think you listed Petra and Leone, right?
Yeah, it's a tie between Bernadette and Marianne. Like in the beginning,
Similar characters, actually.
they are very similar. Like in the beginning, or yeah, excuse me, Bernadetta. In the beginning, like they are both they're just super super introverted. They don't want to talk. They want to you have Marianne who just talks to like birds and horses and stuff, and then you have Bernadetta who is just locked into her room and doesn't want to talk to anybody. And you find out later on that like, oh my goodness, Bernadetta was forced to be groomed to be the perfect woman, and like goodness gracious, like that backfired. And Marianne just like with her life and what she's been through, it's just it spells abusive relationships. Like it just when you hear about that, and it's like, oh my god, like how like they've been through so much, and then now like they became like two of my strongest characters in the game. Like I remember with Marianne, like I made sure that her lance like ability was like at S rank, and she was one of my forefront characters. Like I tried so
She was a
hard.
heavy armor character. Oh, she's dead.
No, she was not my heavy armor character. Like that was just not gonna happen.
So I do want to. Nathan, did you say your top 3? I don't remember.
I did not, but it's Sedith, Shamir, and Lysithea.
Interesting.
And I think it's the first mention of Shamir. I mean,
Oh, she's
I think
awesome.
She really is.
she's awesome mechanically, but I also she won me over and I was having a problem with this in the game mechanically. I was spending too long trying to like hyper optimize, going around to the monastery doing everything, and you go up and you talk to her because you're trying to talk to everybody, and she says you spend too long roaming the monastery. If you're looking for something specific, try less aimless wandering. And I was just like, I'm in. This is great. And and I was playing as Bylass at that time, so like the game does have, even though relationships are not a big focus, there is a pair up system at the end, and that was a bummer that I couldn't get paired up with her, because as soon as she said that, I was like, all right, you're my favorite. This is you are giving me advice on how to play this game, and it actually helped. It worked. So I had more fun once I was wandering less aimlessly. Yeah.
Fun fact: Shamir and Dorothea are the same voice actor.
Oh.
Yeah, that's weird. It doesn't sound like it at all.
It's talent. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so in looking through the survey results, I mean, there's a lot of answers here, but Dimitri, Claude, Lysithea, and Petra seem to be kind of the overall winners of the game. So that makes sense. let's talk about the DLC a little bit. And I'm going to actually hand this over to Beck because you're the one who actually completed the DLC. And Kevin, you can chime in as well. So this DLC was a bunch of different packs, but really it comes down to the final story pack, which was the Cindered Shadows, whole different little side story. It's actually called side story on the front screen. And 4 new characters. What'd you think?
I didn't love the DLC side story. It was too short, like Daryl mentioned earlier. It was 8 to 10 hours, and the villain, which I don't really want to spoil for Kevin, really.
That's fine.
No worries.
The villain's kind of boring. I didn't really love it. However, it got me introduced to Hilda because you have the 4 new characters from the Ashen Wolves. Then you have the 3 house leaders, and you have 3 people from, 1 person from each house, 3 more people. So you have Linhardt, Hilda, and why can't I remember who the other person is? That's how unimportant it was. Ash.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everybody forgets Ash.
Poor Ash, Lord Lenato.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the story in and of itself was more difficult than the regular gameplay, and Kevin is getting to the hardest part for me, which was chapter 3.
Good luck.
Man.
But what was fantastic is playing New Game Plus after doing the Cindered Shadows storyline. It was so cool having those 4 students be able to be part of your house. And they're easy to recruit because you had already completed Cinder Shadows. You just bring them right in. They're amazing. So you have Yuri, Balthus, who I S-ranked in my Golden Deer
He's your boo.
story, yes. He looks a bit like Wolverine, and I dig it. Happy, who is amazing. She was edging out Constance for my number 3 pick of favorite characters.
In personality, not dissimilar to Petra / Shamir.
Kind of Edelgardy, too. She's a little anti-church type. But Constance is the clear winner here. She's amazing because when you do a battle with her in the sun, she's very morose. She's very subdued. She doesn't really amp herself up.
Self-deprecating.
She doesn't amp herself up. But man, when she's in the underground abyss, which is where these 4 students have been hiding out, she's like, acknowledge my contribution. Whenever she wins something, she's amazingly complex. And
she basically has multiple personality disorder, and it's really funny.
But the vampire thing is true. Like in the sun, she isn't herself. And
Or is she?
I would say that if you want to do New Game Plus, definitely do Cindered Shadows first, just so that you can have those 4 students. They're amazing. You're
going to make me spend $25, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
It's worth every cent. They're so good.
So I was watching along with this, and I was going, during the Cindered Shadows thing, I was like, okay, this is fine. We did not get our money's worth here. As soon as she got in the game, and all of a sudden these characters have like supports with other characters that actually add to the story, like Balthus figuring out by himself where Claude came from. And
early on.
Yeah, early on.
Like on his C rank.
Yeah. Really questioning things like that. And they have paralogs that are actually really interesting to watch, and the characters themselves are interesting. That's when I went, oh, okay, this was worth it. This makes sense.
Yeah, and the sauna's okay too. The sauna's the other part of the DLC. That's fine. But
the sauna, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a few pieces. So you got some extra missions and such that was nice.
Oh, and Anna. You get to recruit Anna, the shopkeeper.
Right.
Yeah, Anna, who has no supports, which is really disappointing.
Oh, I wanted.
What about Juritsa? Is he part of the DLC?
I don't remember if he's a DLC or if he just was added in an update. But yes, now you can actually recruit Juritsa, who, by the way, spoiler, but is the Death Knight. So you can recruit Juritsa to your team in Crimson Flower only, so the Edelgard route. He's interesting.
They gave the Death Knight the coolest crit animation when you're facing him. I've just in the past week I was watching it again, and I was just like, this is really
who did you kill?
Really intense. Holy cow! And they're dead. Yeah.
Aww.
Who was it?
Well, I will admit a lot of people died. I did make an allowance for myself that if I was going to try to get those dark seals, that the pact did not apply.
Yeah, that's
So,
fair.
That's
That's fair.
Yeah, and I mean, in half the time, my house leader died anyway, so it's just like, well, you're just bad at this, so you can't do the pact because the whole game, tells you have to rewind. You're not allowed to let your house leader die.
So I successfully did the pact through normal mode, and I lost a couple characters, but really nobody I really cared about. That's a very heartless thing to say, but whatever. And then I went into hard mode, and I lost a ton of characters, and it was very, very upsetting.
To the Death Knight?
No, I didn't even fight him, and I didn't want anybody to be a dark mage, so I just kind of let it go. But like, I lost Dorothea and Bernadetta in the same turn. I've mentioned that before.
That's painful.
I lost so many. I lost Adu and Felix and like so many good characters, and it was really disappointing. The only
what was
time
your death count?
Oh God, I probably lost 8 or so of them.
Okay,
like a lot. The only one I actually reverted the pact on was like on the second to last map. An archer that wasn't even supposed to go for Mercedes changed his mind, went for her, insta-critted her with like a 2% chance. I was like, you know what? I don't even want to spend the time making another healer. No, I'm going to rewind this. And that was the only time I deviated. I did not regret that. I was fine. But all right. So I think it's time. I mean, we've talked for a couple hours on this game, which
it's quite a bit.
Turns out the game is really good. I think we should go through some final thoughts of us and from the Discord people and Twitter people. Hello.
But before we go, I do want to mention, I know I didn't finish Cinder Shadows, but I really do like Yuri. I'm going to say this now, but I think his voice is the definition of gorgeous and morbid. Like, it's just, I don't know.
God.
Like when he speaks, I'm just like, man, like I'm like entranced, and then I'm like, whoa, but it's like it's kind of
he is eerie. A trickster.
It's a little eerie. So
you definitely need to do New Game Plus then.
I definitely will, and I would
do New Game Plus and go Crimson Flower and let's talk.
Oh, and I could recruit Yuritsa. But I was gonna do Blue Alliance though. Oh, I'll flip a coin. No.
So in my opinion, and I mean, sorry to the Blue Lions fans, I know there are some Dragon and Lightning Naga and a few others out there.
I'm coming around on Blue Lions.
It was the weakest campaign for me. From watching it, I watched it. I played it. I watched the Golden Deer one. I played the Crimson Flower one. Yeah, overall, it was just kind of like it's kind of a downer for me. But that's just me. So.
Golden Deer definitely made me laugh more than the rest of them. So
yeah.
If you're looking for laughs, do that one.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's go with our final thoughts of the game now that we are out of the spoilers. I think we've all given it scores and such. Anything else you guys want to say about the game before we move on to our next game of the month, which who knows what it is yet?
Yeah, I just want to. Oh, go ahead.
I want to call out the chapter intro animations, the line art.
Those are cool.
That
so
then
pretty.
gets filled in, and they're doing the Ken Burns Civil War like pan and scan on the art, and it is amazingly detailed, so it looks good when they zoom in and then pan over. I just couldn't get enough of those chapter intros. That was maybe my single favorite part of the game.
Yeah, those are cool. And what was weird was in part 1, it's all about like the lore of Fodlan and what the people are doing at the time and such like that. In the second part of the game, it's all literally just the here's what you missed on Fire Emblem type recap. Like, Edelgard is advancing on, whatever. It's a completely different shift, but it's still cool. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I really liked that was really challenging were the paralogs. I mean, you get to learn more about, each character's story too through that, and like it's pretty challenging. And I lost Hilda in one of them. But then I really didn't like Marianne's paralog, Forgotten Hero. Like it was just so, gosh, like you're trying to kill all these like these beasts that come in. There's like this one huge demonic beast, and like it would do this one attack that it has like this really crazy AoE, and then like 5 of my characters are about to die, and I'm like, oh god, like I think I'm just trying to kill this beast first, and then because like for these I want to just like defeat everything on the map, but I didn't really have a choice here. I'm like, okay, I just gotta kill the beast before I lose 5 units next turn. So yeah,
nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I've said pretty much everything I want to say. we can actually go to some of our comments. So I'll read one from Darkus, actually. He said the game did a fantastic job of building relationships between characters. Unlike previous games, which would just kind of throw them into the battle, having them as students, and then building the relationships rather than just choosing the right character to breed with. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a very good point. So he liked the way it told a single story from different points of view, which I think is a very strong point of the game, and just how different and unique the outlooks are, which I think we've spent the better part of this episode talking about pretty much. So yeah, all in all, I think the game is a fantastic piece of storytelling as well as a very good character piece. So yeah, strong praise.
I liked his comment on a different question about who was the villain. He says, perhaps all along the real villain was the unknowing professor leading their students to death while being secretly helped/controlled by a god in their head.
It's a very strong argument.
That's great. It makes me think.
Lightning Naga says, I was incredibly surprised at how much I enjoyed Fire Emblem Three Houses. I honestly couldn't find anything wrong about it. I haven't been so entranced by a game and had so much passion towards one since Persona 3.
That's high praise.
Let's see. Well, one of our favorites in the community, Dragon, he mentioned, this is a game that took me multiple playthroughs to really appreciate its nuances. But once I did, I realized that this is a thoughtfully constructed game with intricate writing that holds water with incredible consistency across all of its route playthroughs, even down to the DLC side story. The series made an amazing turnaround here from the fan consensus. That was the train wreck of fates with really strong character designs, a story branched into multiple routes, each as their own alternatively told version of a history of events within an overarching story, which as an overall concept worked much better here, as well as thoughtful improvements to the classic turn-based FE or Fire Emblem strategy gameplay with the addition of gambits, length attacks, novel enemy monster configurations, and more. I was thoroughly impressed with this entry. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree 100%. Like, we even talked about the gambits. Like, that was awesome. Just having, just these attacks that you can use that were not, they're kind of like a freebie, basically. Well, there's only a number of freebies you can get per time, but yeah, it's just nice to use those. And then like when they are successful, you can freeze your enemies, like in terms of like where they can move and attack, and it just adds another layer of strategy to an overall brilliant game. So
Jordan Williams wrote us, I enjoyed getting to know the characters' story arcs and building my unit how I wanted. Gameplay was fun, intuitive, smooth, and visually fun to watch. Thought the lore was interesting and relatively deep. The game didn't really have as much depth and intricate, didn't really get as deep and intricate with geopolitical issues as I'd hoped. Thought they could have had more nuanced elements or surprises between the factions. That's a fair point. I think that the game was more focused on the character stories it was trying to tell.
Yeah.
And it could have done some of these like larger effect type modes, but I'm almost worried that it would have gotten bogged down. So I don't know, but it is a fair point.
Is that a possibility? I don't know about Fire Emblem history, about a sequel in the same location? Kind of flesh some of the stuff out?
Oh, that would be amazing.
Say yes. Please say yes.
So I was thinking about this actually because I think there's enough story here for a sequel. The issue there is the one time that they actually did do a straight sequel to a previous game was with Path of Radiance and then Radiant Dawn, which was a sequel to Path of Radiance. And what they did was Path of Radiance, the first game in the series, did not have those ending scenes of telling you what the characters went on to do. So like as you supported characters and such, it didn't tell you anything about them in the credits. The other games all in the series all did. Actually made me dislike that game right there, which is kind of a silly reason, but I love those moments. Like watching which characters got married and moved on and how they're living now. I love that little recap. So I don't know. I could see them doing a sequel, but I could also just see them doing something completely different next time. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's like if they're gonna do a sequel, like the expectations are gonna be rocket sky high. Like it's gonna be hard to top Three Houses for sure. I mean, I would much rather have them do like a completely different game, but I mean, still, have the, maintain that strong, like just how they did the tactics, the battle systems and the gambits and the link attacks and all that. So, and so keep pretty much everything. I just want everything, everything that they do in Three Houses, like just a different story. But yeah, yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's still a lot to play in the game. Like you can easily spend 300 hours, I think, and then you'll be done. I mean, isn't that what the director said? Like you spend 300 hours to finish the whole game, not even including DLC.
It's about that, yeah. It's close.
I think it would take me longer.
Yeah.
I think so. Dapper Dan Man said, wonderful writing. For a beginner like me, the difficulty options were just right. I agree. Dapper Dan Man, same for me. The combat was interesting and challenging. On my second playthrough, I'm starting to grasp the depth of character development, and it's amazing. Fantastic game. He thinks that the lore is surprising and immersive. Agreed on all counts.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nathan, you got any more you want to read? We can.
We got a lot
so
of
many
feedback
we can.
on this.
It's all positive.
Thanks to the community for this, but everybody has a lot of feelings, a lot of insights, and everybody has a lot of different insights. I don't know. I just I'm overwhelmed by the responses that we've got here.
So let me do this. We do have a channel in our Discord in which we would love for you to jump in and start keep the conversation rolling. Tell us what you think about the game. If we get some really good collaborations and such, we may be looking at like a blog post in the near future on everybody's thoughts on the game, so that this doesn't become a 3-hour podcast. It turns out, we like talking about the game, but I think that's where we're going to end it unless you guys have any final thoughts. I call this game a masterpiece.
There's one thing that we didn't discuss much. The music is fantastic. Like
it's the best in the series, in my opinion.
Yeah, like I listen to the preparation music theme even when I'm working out. Sometimes I'm like, yo, I'm good to go. I mean, I feel a lot more livelier and just goodness, even just walking around the monastery, with that one piece that I hummed and you chimed in too, Daryl. Like, actually, that was really. I remember that time when we did that hum at the very end of one episode. That was really nice. You harmonized very well, and just the music. Yeah, see, the music is so great. Like, I don't know, it's
just the overall presentation. The graphics are great. The music is great.
Yeah. I mean,
I love it. But otherwise, I think that's probably going to do us. Nathan, any final thoughts?
I have a couple of notes on thoughts about a sequel, just mechanically. But if you don't want to get into it, that's all right.
Hey, go ahead, man.
I would like a little more map variety, and I think that they've got the opportunity here. I can understand the volume of work that was required for all of this to set it all up, high definition. That's totally understandable that they don't have, decades in order to develop it. But I love the framework of this game. I love the way the battles are set up, and I would love it if they just kind of did more with it. That the game engine feels so great and feels like they could tell a million different stories with it in the future. One of the other really cool things was you had multiple zoom levels in battle, and they never really did too much with the zoomed in section. I was just kind of spitballing with thoughts about a sequel, and I thought if in the future they have varied home bases that aren't always, like one monastery spot. If food is running short, maybe you need to find food on the battlefield, and you could use that zoomed in section for that. Maybe the lost items are also only obtainable if you search through the forest, because I mean the amount of effort and then the amount of actual utility that came out of that zoomed in view, they were at odds with each other. But I mean, I'm excited.
You could zoom all the way down to like a third person view almost.
And you see your battalion around you. You see, if you go into there's an urban map that looks kind of like Venice with some canals and bridges and things. There are markets in there, and there's fish hanging in the fish market that you can only see when you're zoomed in. And I don't know, just flabbergasted by how much was in there if you wanted to look for it.
Yeah, that's definitely an underrated part of the game. Like being able to zoom in and see the details that they put in. Like, gosh, how they've fleshed out this game like a lot, just like with all the details, and I don't know. It's incredible.
I didn't know zoom in was a thing. So I guess I got to go play Crimson Flower again.
Yay.
Yeah.
And yeah, one point I wanted to make I missed earlier. Previous Fire Emblem games kind of felt like me and my 11 friends versus this giant bad guy for the fate of the world. I loved the Gambit system just for giving me an actual army. Like, this actually gave it some scale that Fire Emblem's always kind of missed, and I really enjoyed that. But yeah, great game.
And in hard mode, the other side has battalions and gambits too. I'm learning that the
fun way,
the hard way.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, man. All right, well, I think that's gonna wrap us. Any final comments, or can I just wrap it?
Girl power.
Girl power. Okay.
There we go.
In that case, thanks for listening. We're gonna wrap it for this week. You notice I did not do a question because Sergio's not here, and that's kind of his thing, so I want to include him. So keep in mind the question from last week. Naprad, do you remember what the question from last week is?
I can look it up, but no, I do not.
All right, so listen to last week's episode.
Well, you'll hear a lot of great music.
I am sorry, and we will answer those next week. But otherwise, if you have any comments or questions for the show, please write us an email at NintendoJumpPodcast@gmail.com. Otherwise, if you want to get up with us, we are on Twitter and Instagram at NintendoJump. We also have a Facebook group for Nintendo Jump Podcast. And our Twitter links to our Discord, which we would love for you to join. We have a ton of people in there who are playing our games of the month and commenting on them and helping each other and such. It's kind of a magical place. Really, really like it. But otherwise, I think that is going to do it for this week. So, Beck, Kevin, Nathan, thank you guys for joining. This has been a lot of fun. And on behalf of all of us, we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
I was wondering if you were going to hit that.
You're making him laugh.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. I was wondering too.